Gunther, and he is wearing a typical private's uniform of the Army of the Potomac and also the Army out west. This was the standard uniform by 1860, late 62, all the way through the war. And I'll let him go on with his little gear.
This is the typical jacket you think of when you think of the Federal soldier, because it is the standard jacket. I had made some modifications because I like extra pockets. And you've seen some soldiers do such things as well. There are several different depots that issue these jackets. This is from the Schuylkill Arsenal, Pennsylvania. Typically it would have been hand sewn by ladies in Philadelphia under contract. But it's supplied majority of the Army, all the federal armies. Representing the 141st New York, was raised in Chemung County as well as 2 neighboring counties. There were at least 2 companies raised in Elmira, and parts of other companies had Elmira men as well. In early 1863, late 1863, they were shipped out west, Tennessee, fought with Sherman all the way to the sea. Because most everyone else has already pointed at the jacket and says typical jacket, that's pretty much it.
The next fella here, Austin, he is wearing a typical New York State uniform. First part of the war, New York State provided all of its own uniforms, and as things got a little touchy in late 63, no, 62, they ran out of them, and they started going to the standard uniform, which Mr. Gunther was just showing. And then during the winter of 63-64, the state of New York reissued the equipment. There are several regiments, one being the 86th New York, which also came through Elmira. There were soldiers in that outfit that carried that uniform throughout the war. It all depended if they had to replace, they went to the other one, but eventually they went back to the state. And I'll let Austin here give you an idea about that one.
This uniform is your basic, based off your traditional federal infantry uniform. What I want to point out is the coat is actually shorter compared to all the other ones. That's just what New York was going with. On top of that, there's not much more about the uniform as compared to the other ones. It's about basic.
Yep, what he would have had on, but I've got it from him. Oh, I have it. Is all of his brass buckles and stuff would have had NYS on, New York State, or SNY, I'm sorry, State of New York. That would have been on here, on his cartridge box. Mr. Percy here is going to show you a typical uniform worn in the North. It's called a frock coat. It's a little bit fancier, but all the units were also issued this. A lot of times in the New York State kits, the enlisted men, the privates anyway, and the corporals would have been with a short jacket, and the sergeants would have been in the long ones. That's where they sort of stood out a little bit and looked fancier. But there were units who were at 114th New York when they left home. That's all they were in was the frock coats. But I'll let Percy here do the job.
Yeah, this is basically just a 1858 model frock coat, which would have been left over from the regular Army. And the only difference between this and the regular Army is the regular Army had dark blue trousers, and they were also used early in the war. Other than that, trappings are the same. 4-inch cap. Not much more to say about it other than the coat is different than these 2 gentlemen.
The Army tried to stay the same. Yeah, when we get done, if you want to come back through, there's other jackets here on display. The one there with the yellow sergeant stripes, when I first saw that, I says that's Cav, but it's not. That's engineers. There was 2 engineer outfits that recruited here heavily in the Elmira area. One was the 15th New York Engineers, the other one was the 50th New York Engineers. When you read of all the bridges and fortifications and things that were built in and around the Army of the Potomac, those are the guys that did it. You probably know something about the Battle of Fredericksburg, where they had to build the bridges under fire to get across the river on the Rappahannock. Well, those are the boys from around here that actually built those bridges. The hard part was they started out in the morning when it was foggy, and about halfway across the river the fog lifted, and the good old boys from the south on the other side started to shoot them down left and right, so they couldn't get the bridges up. First time in Army history they made an amphibious landing. They took the pontoon boats that were used to build the bridges, loaded them up with troops, sent them across, and chased the Rebs off. One of the first units across was the 89th New York, which was out of the Binghamton area. So you had the 89th Infantry involved in the crossing, and you had the 15th and 50th New York Engineers, who were also out of this area.